It's time to take your seat in the front row with Mike Vaccaro. Here's your host, Mike Vaccaro.
Well, thank you, Chuck, and welcome, everybody. Episode 3 of In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. I am Mike Vaccaro, out front, behind the scenes, creator, producer, and director, JR Quitman with us as well. Thanks for joining us here today. If you missed the first 2 episodes, pretty good ones, go back to our YouTube channel. You can watch those. Episode 1 with New York Post sports writer Mike Vaccaro, no relation to me. Episode 2 was Joe Rosen, a Major League Baseball sports agent. You want to listen to that one as well, especially right now during the MLB playoffs going on. So who do we get and where do we go for episode number 3? For episode number 3, we go to basketball and to an old friend for me, Buzz Peterson. Buzz, at one point, the head coach here at UNCW, where I'm the play-by-play announcer, and obviously a great background before that, time spent at North Carolina, roommate of Michael Jordan. And he is the answer to a trivia question after beating out Michael Jordan twice for North Carolina Player of the Year as a high school player. Jordan, runner-up to Buzz Peterson both those times. Now spending time as an assistant GM with the Charlotte Hornets. Episode number 3, our guest is Buzz Peterson. Well, Coach, first of all, I appreciate you joining us here today. I know you're very busy, about to kick off the NBA season as you're the assistant GM with the Charlotte Hornets, but thanks for taking a little time out of your schedule to spend some time with us here today.
Mike, hey, thanks for having me. Good memories with you and everything, the shows we used to do. So I'm excited about doing this.
Yeah, I call you Coach because that's my reference point for you. You and I worked together for a couple of years, 4 years at UNCW. We did hundreds of interviews, but nothing that really focused on you. It was always about your team, always about your players. So obviously you have a very interesting story, an interesting background. I wanted to get into that here today. And let's start at the very beginning. As you were born in Asheville, North Carolina, obviously you gravitated to basketball. How did that happen? Who put that basketball in your hand, and when did you realize that was going to be your sport?
Interesting, Mike. You asked that. I was talking to my kids the other night about this. I was born in Asheville. I grew up in Hickory, and I got intrigued by basketball a little bit. All sports really, but I like basketball. I used to go to Lenore Ryan. My mom would take me to the games there at Lenore Ryan, and Rick Barnes was on the team then. And she would tell me I'd come home after games and have to shoot a little basketball into trash cans at the end of the hallway. But my love for a lot of things was football. I really enjoyed football a lot. I played it up to about my sophomore year in high school. The only problem was I tried to eat a lot of peanut butter sandwiches to get bigger, but I only weighed like 165 pounds, 6'3", whatever at the time, and 165. And I thought I was going to get broke in half, but I loved it. I played quarterback, punted, kicked. I did all that stuff. And the other love, I had baseball. I love baseball a lot, and I played that up to my sophomore year. But I got to the point there, Mike, I said, I got to decide, what do you want to do? If you want to step, go farther, get a college scholarship, what sport can you excel in? And I thought with my body frame and everything, I said, it's going to be basketball. I played shortstop in baseball. I could never be a power hitter. I was always hitting the opposite way, but I could get on. I hit first force a lot. But I loved it. My grandfather used to go to their house. He used to hit pickle with me all the time, hit grounders. And so that's, anyway, one quick story on baseball I'll never forget. And I was in Asheville, I think it's the 4th grade. There was a guy that was older. It was third baseman. And I was supposed to be in the league, but I showed the coaches I could do a grounder, I could hit just a little bit. So they bumped me up. But the third baseman in that team in that league was Cal Ripken Jr. His dad was the manager for the Asheville Tourist at the time. So anyway, that's a story about that. But I went on to play a little basketball at Asheville High. The team was pretty good. We lost in the state tournament, Chapel Hill High School, and then went on to North Carolina from there. So had some success, had some injuries along the way, but basketball's been really very, very good for me and my family and everything. It's taken us this far into coaching and now to the front office in NBA.
And I guess you grew up in a time where you did play, more than one sport. Right now, you're seeing more kids specializing in one sport. Was it fun at that time to play all those different sports and kind of get a taste of every one until you found out, like you said, what was going to be, maybe your passion?
Yeah, there was no AU at the time. So you didn't have that. Once basketball was over with, you jumped to baseball. Once baseball was over with, you jumped in the summertime, you jumped to football right into it in the fall. So you didn't have the long season with the basketball or anything. So it was fun. I really enjoyed being around the guys and the team and everything in high school there. But I'd have probably been broken in half being that skinny and everything. But anyway, it was fun. The days in high school very good. Then on to Chapel Hill was even better.
Let's talk about basketball now. And at what point, did you think, okay, I'm pretty good. I've got a chance to take this to the next level? When were you starting to get recruited by some of the big names out there?
When I was in the sixth grade, I was in middle school, and the PE teacher had these cones out. And he said, go, we're doing this. So I went through these cones, and I jumped in line first and all this stuff. And after class is over with, he says, you like basketball? I said, I love it. He says, let me tell you something, young man. He said, if you allow me to work with you, I think I can help you become a better player and everything. I said, okay, I'll do whatever. So I painted lines in my driveway. My mom and dad got mad, but I had 10 spots where I'd shoot from. And it's just a drive there, the want to be good. And my goal was, Mike, was to become a McDonald's All-American. And my goal, I could look out and see a mailbox, and I said, I want to get a scholarship. I want to get letters in the mail from universities. And it's have much changed now. I mean, phone calls. There was no phone calls back then. There was no emails, nothing like that. I wanted to get a letter in the mailbox. By the eighth, ninth grade, I started getting some letters. And I think I had my first offer about in the ninth grade, and that's when I thought I may have a chance to excel at it.
1981, you were the parade and McDonald's All-American. So was that kind of the big checkoff on your list? Like you said, that's what you want to do. And what was it like once that happened?
My coach, Rodney Johnson, called me into his office, and he had told me about that. And it was kind of, and I think back, like 2 days later, he said, you made a parade All-American. And then the one that really got me, called me and says, you were awarded the North Carolina High School Player of the Year. And I said, really? That's great. But that's the one that gets Michael a little bit. he tells people, you've heard me say this all the time. He said, yeah, Buzz's dad owned, 6 out of 7 major newspapers in North Carolina. That's why he got it. But the awards were coming there pretty quick. And it was kind of interesting with different things. And but that's something. My goal was to work hard to get there. I had a couple high school teammates that loved to play. They were all a year younger than me. So the high school coach, he gave me a lot of resources to be successful and allowed me the opportunity to gain a lot of these achievements.
Well, you touched on it there twice, the North Carolina Player of the Year, and you're probably the answer to a trivia question, who beat out Michael Jordan both of those times. What did you know of Michael Jordan at the time? Obviously, what we know of him now is one of the best, if not the best, NBA players and basketball players of our generation. But what did you know about him back at that point?
We talked about this about a month ago. Michael and I did it in his office. Back then it was Mike. 40-plus years it's been. And I was in Granville Tower South, about, 7th floor, whatever. Oh, there you go. About this, one of the top floors where I was there with my high school teammate, Randy Shepard. Michael was there with his high school teammate, Leroy Smith. We met each other in the dorm there on a Sunday afternoon. We talked, and Michael came in and says, hey, I've done a little background on you. I said, you have? He said, yeah. He said, how'd you get to the BC camp? That was Bolton and Cronier's camp down in Millersville, Georgia. I said, well, my high school coach told me, he said, it's probably the best talented. And they were calling him for wanting me to come to the camp. But you had to have 3 letters from Division I coaches to get in at the time. And Michael didn't know anything about the camp. And that's kind of where I went down there. And, I've told players, I've told kids, everything. Sometimes you just need that one game or that one half. You can really set the tone or build that, you've made it there. And I had maybe 1 or 2 games in front of some coaches that were there to watch Aubrey Sherrod, who went to Wichita, Kansas. He was one of the top 2 guards in the country at that time. I had 2 really good games against him in front of these coaches. And then that was next thing I know, I got switched from another team. And I think it was Coach Chambers, it was at Kentucky at the time. I got put on his team, and I hardly even played the rest of the week. And he kept telling me, he said, "You've done all you can do. You've showed everybody. Kentucky wants you to come play there," and all that stuff. So, make a long story short, I had committed to Kentucky, but Michael and I made this little promise to each other we'd go play at the same school one another. To your question, I never played with Michael that whole week at Chapel Hill. He played with my high school teammate Randy Shipper, and I would ask Randy, I said, "Randy, what kind of player is he?" He says he's more of a post player at 6'4". He doesn't shoot well from outside, but what he can do, you can throw alley-oops to him. He's pretty good, and he can rebound. So that, never saw him, and then we go to high school and all that stuff. Then we started playing the McDonald's All-American games, and his high school team got eliminated a little bit early. Then we got eliminated by Chapel Hill. We played in the Capital Classic, and then we played in the McDonald's East-West game, and that's when I knew then this guy, for me to beat him out at Chapel Hill, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really hard because I think he went for 30 points at that game.
Is it true he kept calling you roommate to try to get you and kind of pester you to go to Carolina over Kentucky?
There was one signing period back then in April, and he committed in November. And I visited Kentucky, and when I got back, I told Joe B. Hall, Leonard Hamilton, Joe Dean Jr., those guys that I was coming. I got to school, on the way to school, it was a Sunday night. On the way to school Monday, I told one of my teammates, I said, "Look, I want to tell you, but please don't tell anybody. I don't want anybody to know right now, but I'm going to Kentucky." He said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah, I really like the place." Well, he goes directly to that gym and tells my high school coach. I'm in homeroom class. He comes and gets me out for about the next 4 periods. He's talked to me. We're going through the whole stuff. Why there? You should be going to Chapel Hill. You need to look at. I visited Maryland, Duke, and Virginia in these schools, and Krzyzewski just got there. Wasn't sure about him and everything. So, long story short, I told myself, so I'll sit back and let me think about it a little bit. And then the next day, Coach Smith came to practice and then came to my house. Of course, my mom liked that. Dad's not really a big, he's more baseball fan than anything. And he brought me, he said, I don't know if you should open this thing back up, but I'll stay away from it. Don't let anybody influence you, all this stuff. So, and then I started getting calls from Michael. "Hey, what's going on? We're supposed to go to school together." I said, "Yeah." So I opened it back up, and probably in January, 2 months later, I committed to North Carolina. So stuck with my promise with him. So we were in Oklahoma City that day for exhibition game, and I was walking the door, and the guy says, "You were Jordan's roommate, right?" I said, "Yeah, I get recognized that by a lot." I said, "You know what? We've all screwed up a lot. There's one thing I did right, my man. I picked the right roommate."
Yeah, it's always going to be kind of a footnote in your bio that you were his roommate.
Mm-hmm.
So who recruited you? Was it Michael Jordan or was it Dean Smith? Who was the better recruiter in that process?
They were both good recruiters, and Eddie Fogler, Roy Williams, Coach Guthers. They were good recruiters. And but Mike, I grew up in the state. I was I went to camp there 8 years in a row. I liked this. I was in love with North Carolina, but somehow I got overwhelmed by Kentucky at the time and was intrigued. They only had one scholarship, and they loved their basketball. Wildcat Lodge, where they lived at the time. So I was a 17-year-old kid who got intrigued by their facilities and their coaches.
Well, let's talk a little bit about again North Carolina, and let's start with Dean Smith. I'm sure to this day there's things that you do, the person that you are, that maybe are a reflection of Dean Smith. What's your memories of him as your coach and maybe as a mentor in your life?
Well, the big thing is I'll never forget asking him. I said, when I got the job in '96 at App State, I said, "Coach," I said, "what's it going to take to be successful?" And he says, "Buzz, how'd you feel like it was here?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you, I feel like your program was very disciplined." And he said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, I just felt like on the floor when we were coaching, you had the attention of all of us. You were the main voice. There were no other coaches. It was your voice. It was very structured, very disciplined. off the floor, we had to live that disciplined life also. And so that was something I always took from him. But the one thing about Coach is he made it a family atmosphere. Once you were done, that's not the end of you. He would, what can we do to help you be successful now? What career path you want to take? And he's influential on all of us. And down to Coach Guthridge. I mean, Coach Guthridge was there with us every day in between the trenches. When things got tough, he was there to communicate with. Just a tremendous staff and everything with Roy Williams and Eddie Fogler at the time. So, but it was a great memories. The '82 team, as we see there, won it all. But I'll never forget Coach Smith telling some people one time he thought the '84 team was the most talented team he ever had that didn't win a national championship.
Well, I mean, you look at the '82 team, though, and JR had some pictures there of the team. I mean, it was a pretty stacked team to win it. And he had near misses, Coach Smith did, as far as winning a national championship. To be that team that brought him the first one, what does that mean to you guys, even to this day?
Well, Mike, when you look at success, if it's baseball, if it's football, whatever it is, a lot of times you always hear the coach's voice or the coach's voice all the time. That's kind of natural. You hear it. But when you're out there and you make a teammate upset or you let your teammates down, that really can get to you if you're a competitor. And so when you have the leader within these teams, we had a guy by the name of Jimmy Black. We had a leader there, and we did not want to let him down. And throughout that year, he would have meetings, and it would say, "Hey guys, we're going to be the first to win it for him. We're going to be the first." And he would, he said, "Hey, we got three different parts of the season: non-conference, conference, and postseason. Let's get ourselves ready for it, focus." So Jimmy had us. He had us to a T. And these meetings would be real short sometimes in his dorm room. We'd be all just standing around and say, "Get rest. Let's be ready to go tomorrow." And the other thing is, I was talking to Penny Hardaway about this earlier this week. We all knew our role. The chemistry everybody was happy with it. Coach Smith had a philosophy. If you're a starter, you're tired, you bring yourself out, you can bring yourself back in. We knew that. So you had to start to get there. So if you didn't, nothing but your fault that you're not there. So I was content with coming off the bench and subbing for Mike or Matt, whatever. And I was happy with that. Jim Bratt was happy coming for Jimmy Black. So all the way down through the line. So everybody was excited, happy. The chemistry was great. Nowadays, like I told Penny, I don't know how y'all do it because the AU coach, the parents are in their ear. You're the best thing. You should be playing 25 minutes a game. The coach is doing you wrong. We didn't have any of that stuff. There was no social media. So I don't know how the coaches do it to this day. It's got to be difficult. It's got to be really hard how they manage now with the NIL, all that stuff. I just don't know how they do it, and it can make it a lot difficult. But the one thing I will say, our team chemistry, it was the best.
Interesting that you would say someone like Jimmy Black was your leader. Again, you had some talented guys in James Worthy, Perkins. You had Michael Jordan as well, but it was a guy that maybe didn't have that light on him all the time. But was it important that it was someone like him and maybe not a Michael Jordan?
Well, he was the quarterback, the point guard. I think that's a key position.
Sure.
Football, it's the quarterback, and maybe baseball's the catcher sometimes that has to be that leader. So, as our point guard, I mean, he was like the coach out on the floor for us. So it just matched up well. Now, there's nothing wrong with having your 3-man or your 4-man, somebody that can be the leader, but it's just things just lined up perfect for us as Jimmy Black, the point guard, being our leader within the team.
So again, the 1982 national championship. From there, you get drafted 7th round by the Cavs in 1985, and then you played overseas. How long was that? What was that like for you? And at what point did you think, maybe playing isn't going to be my future and it's going to be coaching instead?
When I got drafted, I said, I told Coach Smith, I said, that must be a favor Coach Carl did for you, whatever, to draft me. But I went up there. George was great. Spent time with a little preseason, and he called me and said, "Buzz, you need to go into CBA. You need to go there for a year, 2. get a feel for the game. Well, I go to Bangor, Maine. I don't know if many people have been there, but it's not warm at all. So I stayed in the Hilton at the airport with another guy. And, I was like, we talked about discipline a while ago. Well, if practice was at 10 o'clock at North Carolina, well, you were there a lot earlier. You got all your work done. And by the time coach came in at 10, your practice starts. Well, I was doing that same thing. And then 10 o'clock would get there and it'd be like one or two of us. And then practice may start 30, 35 minutes later, whatever. And then so it was just, I told coach about it and how it's going. I said, I'm not having fun. He said, let me tell you something. He said, why don't you get back to Chapel Hill? Come in, let's talk. You need a couple classes once you start with the master's, work on something like that, and be here and let's talk about where you want to go. So that brings that family atmosphere here. Then you're thinking, all right, this guy cares about you. Whatever. So I go back, we talk, and I told him I want to get into coaching. And I'm not coaching, I'm sorry, scouting. He said, scouting? I said, yeah, in the NBA. He said, oh, Buzz, that could be tough. I said, and he said, because a lot of the scouts now are former college coaches. And they've got a lot of experience. They're thinking, I just don't know if I can get you that. I said, well, how about scouting period? So he called Bob Gibbons, All-Star Sports, and that's where I started. And, we didn't really talk a lot about coaching at that time. So I helped Bob out for a year. And I met Ralph Patterson, who was assistant at App State at the time. He said they had a part-time position open. I met with Coach Apke, and that's where I started in coaching. But before all of that, after I had a little stint in Belgium. I went over there for a little bit, and that's when I knew that dribbling basketball was about it. I came home during the holidays, and a little discrepancy on the pay and all that stuff, and that was it for me. I knew dribbling basketball was over. I got to do something else in my life.
I mean, that's got to be a tough transition for any athlete.
Oh yeah.
Again, especially a high level athlete that you were, the McDonald's All-American that you were, a national champion that you were. Was that a tough realization to come to, that I've got to stop playing and look at the next step in my future?
It's a tough transition, Mike. It really is. It's very humbling that it's something you've done all your life and now you can't do it. You see guys playing in the NBA that you played against and you feel like you did well against them and everything. But the bottom line is, like, your body's not it's not strong enough for whatever. They had that one moment that made them successful, like I had it back in high school going to college. So it's just unfortunate I worked out. But I said, you know what? There's more that can be taken out of this. And then when I dipped into the coaching, I think it was 1987, I believe, at App State. And it was interesting. I'll never forget driving up to Boone from Asheville. My dad goes, I think my pay was, I think I got like $500 a month or something like that. It's my pay for only like 9 months. And my rent was more than that. And in Blowing Rock, I couldn't find anything in Boone. He said, look here, son, your mother and I will help you, but we're only going to do it for 3 years. And after 3 years, you got to get a real job. And I said, real job? I said, what do you mean? This is a real job, Dad. He says, no. He says, it's hard for me to say that's a real job when your life's dependent on a 18-year-old's decision making. To me, that's not a job. And I sit there and think, God, he is right. Now, years went on. I said, yeah, why would you want to listen to 18-year-olds for your income and for the future? So, but yeah, I was very fortunate. After 2 years, I got a job at East Tennessee State.
Well, you must be like a lot of coaches. You're stubborn. You still stuck with it. You still became a coach. And as you said, 2 years at App State, then ETSU after that. I know you spent a lot of time with Les Robinson at ETSU and then NC State as well. What kind of influence was he on your coaching? Obviously you've got Dean Smith, but then a guy that, you moved with and worked with at a couple of stops had to have some influence on you as well.
Yeah, it's coaching's kind of interesting. You start meeting a lot of people, and I'm at App, and I'm going into the after the second season. So now we go to the third season. I'm thinking, oh boy, I got to find something pretty quick. But Les Robinson called Coach Smith and says, I need assistant coach. So Dave Hanners got the job. So Dave Hanners went to Chapel Hill, and Les asked, I need to replace him. He says, well, replace him. I know Buzz may be interested. So that's where I got the opportunity. She's like, when I left East Tennessee with the NC State with Les, Jeff Lebo took my spot. at East Tennessee State. So, it's a small circle with coaching and everything out there. But I was shocked that Les asked me to go to NC State. But there'd been other people there. Todd Turner at the time was coming in as AD, was a golf team at Carolina. Eric Hyman was a football player. He's his number 2 guy there. So there was many people that at NC State that went to school in North Carolina.
Yeah, that Carolina family spreads wide, but you're at NC State. What was that like for a Carolina guy to be on the opposite bench, especially going into Chapel Hill to take on the Tar Heels?
I'll tell you what was interesting was I'll never forget my first year. You played these international games and they introduced everybody, and they introduced Les, assistant, and then it's my turn to get introduced assistant. And the students started booing me and everything. They were booing me. That's fine. I mean, it's a little ribbon a little bit. And the other thing I remember was we were supposed to play. We were playing Carolina, and after a game. We were with Wendell Murphy and a couple people, and the Chancellor Monteith, and everything. So Wendell comes with this brilliant idea. He said, "Hey, look, we're playing Chapel Hill next week. Plus, I got a special coat for you." He says, "I'll have it ready in about 2 or 3 days, and I'll let you know where to go get it." Well, he calls me 2 days later and says, "I've got a coat for you over at Cameron Village." And I had given my size and everything. It was a ultra red suede sport coat. And he wanted me to wear it against Chapel Hill. But what happened when it was time, and I was going to wear it. I mean, I told Coach Smith, well, I talked to the guys, hey, that's who pays you. You got to wear it. You guys better do it. And when it came time to play Carolina, I walked into Smith Center and went to the locker room, went outside, didn't have my coat on. The guys were, shooting around and everything. And that's when I saw both chancellors of both schools come down and ask for the head coaches. That's when Desert Storm, the war broke out. Mm-hmm. And it was eerie because it's always a 9 o'clock Wednesday night tip-off, and nobody was in Smith Center. Everybody's kind of huddled around the concourse watching TVs. So I didn't wear the coat that night. I got out from wearing it. So we didn't reschedule the game for a month later, and we played in Raleigh and won. And then the next night, back-to-back nights, we played in Chapel Hill. And I wore that red coat both those nights. And probably still have it, but it shrunk a little bit.
Well, I've seen the teal version of that your time at UNCW. So
I do have that coat.
There you go. So it started with the red. So, again, with Les Robinson at ETSU, NC State until 93, and then you go to Vanderbilt, and Jan Van Bredikoff, the head coach there, you're an assistant coach for him, and obviously comes from a basketball family. Was it a chance to listen to somebody else, learn under somebody else at that time?
Mike, I'd been around the ACC all my life. I knew that a lot of people in the ACC, and my goal was to be a head coach by the age of 32. That's something that I don't know why 32. That's what I wanted to be, and I was driven. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to know other people and broaden my horizon a little bit, I better go to another league. And if you remember, the Eddie Fogler's at Vanderbilt, they had some situation there and it worked out. So the AD was Paul Houlihan. Paul was my strength coach at Carolina when I played there. He hired Jan Van Bredikoff, but he called me and said, look, I'd like to get you over here as associate head coach. So I went over and visited Jan and everything. We talked, so he offered me a job. So we took it. And I'm glad I did. I got to know people in the SEC. I was there for 3 years and got the call to go back to Boone. So I'd interviewed other places and didn't get the Murray State job. Mark Goffrey got it. East Tennessee State, Ed DeChillis got it. And I was very lucky to bounce and get App State, which is one I really wanted more than anything else.
And what was your age when you got the App State job?
32. Yeah, I got it a month just in time. Didn't coach my first game about 30. I turned 33 a month later. But, yeah, it was an exciting time. And, that was a job. It's interesting. I tell a lot of young kids this day. I said, remember where you are now. You're working your way up. Make sure you treat everybody the same because you never know you're going to come back. And that person you knew at your organization, at your school, you may run into them again and they may be in a different title and they may be looking to hire somebody. So I always keep a good friendship.
So your goal growing up was to be a McDonald's All-American. You did that. Your goal was to be a head coach at 32. You did that. You have to feel like, all right, something's going right here. I'm doing something right. Where do you get that from and that drive and do you lean back to your parents as, okay, those are the great influences that helped get me to this point right now?
Yeah, I had that inner drive sometimes. I don't know what it was, Mike. I mean, my mother was pretty competitive a little bit. Like I said, my dad wasn't much of a sports fan. He's more of a low key guy. Um, does watch a lot of baseball nowadays, but I don't know. My sister was 6.5 years older than me. I just had this inner to be the best. When I got to App State in the 4 years, and I'm sitting there, and I loved it. I was at a peace there. We had 3 consecutive years of Southern Conference regular season, and we finally broke through and won it the 4th year. And I'm sitting there thinking, I said, okay, back then players didn't go to the pro. They're not leaving, so you had a lot of teams could, people weren't leaving. Teams could get better and better. So I just felt like that it's going to be hard for us to get better than a 14 seed, and we're going to be really good, knock some teams off. So I don't know how much more I can do here, but I would really like to go every day to coach against the best. What it's going to be like to coach against the best Hall of Fame coaches in college, and that was my goal at that time.
And like you said, you did win the championship there, went to the NCAA tournament in the 1999-2000 season. Pinnacle of your coaching career, obviously, to that point. And it is, was the emphasis at that point from other ADs and all, hey, we got to get a guy that went to the NCAA tournament? Was it kind of as much pressure packed then as it is now, that's where a lot of people look at whether or not you took a team to the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I had a lot of communication with he's a friend of mine, Eric Hyman, who at the time was the athletic director at I think he was at Miami, Ohio. Then he went to Texas A&M. He was at South Carolina. He was at I want to say Kansas State. So he's at different places. And Eric kept telling me, he says, get in the tournament, just get into the NCAA tournament, and then. But we were close, and we interviewed at Georgia Tech, Arkansas, Little Rock, St. Louis, a lot of these schools, and and got close but didn't get it. And what's interesting, I was set to come back that next year at App State for the 5th year. And what happened in June, Tom Izzo turned down the Hawks job. Lon Kruger took it from Illinois. Then Bill Self left Tulsa and went to Illinois. And this is June, so this is your camps are wrapping up. You get ready to go recruit in July. It's time you spend time with your family. You're doing your vacations and doing some of your hobbies, like golf or whatever. And I get a call one day about any interest in that job, and I said from the athletic director, Judy McLeod, who is now the commissioner of Conference USA, I believe, right now. And she said, "Hey, would you?" I said, "Yeah, I'd be interested." And so we talked a little bit. She called back the next day. And she says, "Can you come out? But we need to do this quick." And I said, "Well, I can get out there, but I don't know how soon. Like you talking about next week? No, she's talking about tomorrow." I was like, "Geez." And so, like they were very successful. And Norm Roberts was there as assistant. I thought, why not give it to him? They interviewed some other guys that had been very successful. So I had a family friend, Bob Ingles, owns Ingles Grocery Stores there. He had a private plane, so I called him up, and I said, "Hey, Bob, can you get me to Tulsa?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I need to be there tomorrow." I fly out, and I fly back. And we were supposed to be in Hilton Head. So Jan, I'll never forget this. Jan picks me up when I get back. I interviewed for 3 hours, and I went to the airport. And I'm on my way to Hilton Head. And, of course, phones were a lot different back then, so our phone service wasn't great. I get into our condominium where we were, and the phone, I don't know, we had kids were young, running around, and I answered the phone, and it was Judy. She says, "Hey, do you want this job?" I said, "Yes." She says, "Well, I've been trying to get a hold of you for the last 2.5 hours. And I said, "Here's what's happening. Jan's not here. I've got 3 young kids that run around. They want to be on the beach. They want to be in the pool. We just got here." And she's like, "Okay, we want to offer you this job." I said, "Really?" She says, "Yeah. What do you think?" and all this stuff. And so she gave me terms, and we discussed them a little bit. And so we took the job. And Jen and I, with the kids there, we had to get a babysitter to stay with the kids. We flew out for a press conference, and we stayed one night. And we came back, and I talked to Judy while I was there. I said, I just got to ask you something. I said, this came out of this woodwork so quick. What happened? She says, you know what? It's crazy how things work. She said she called Bob Lawless, who was a president, he came to Tulsa from Southwest Airlines. He was a CFO, I believe. And he wanted a Duke assistant coach. And Krzyzewski told him that the guys at that time were not ready. But who are your candidates? And he went through the candidates, and she did not mention my name. And he says, I thought I read in a paper here that Buzz Peterson was one of the guys. And she said, yes, he is, but I didn't think it was fair to ask him, throw his name to you because of the rivalry of Duke and Carolina. He says, oh, no. If you can get him, you better get him. That's what he told Bob Lawless and Judy McLeod. And so that's how I was able to get the job. So I thank Coach a lot. Every time I see him, I said, thank you. But that's what he wanted, and that's how I was able to get it. Because a three-hour interview ain't going to get it, really. They just kind of want to see your face, talk to you, you're sincere. But Krzyzewski was able to get us the job at Tulsa. And then from there, to give Bill Self a lot of credit, Bill had a talented team. I kept one of his assistants, John Phillips, who became the head coach after I left. And I didn't know how to coach these guys, really, because Bill ran a high-low system. I was not used to that, so I had to change the way I coached to help to get these guys. And it's interesting how things worked out, Mike. We lost in overtime in the WAC tournament to Hawaii, who was hot at the time. We probably replaced him as a 12th seed playing your alma mater, Syracuse, and probably get whacked, or something happens in that first round, and that's it. You're back at Tulsa. No, we can get an NIT championship. We beat Cal Irvine at home. We go and win at Mississippi State. And now you're on TV. Now you're being seen. You go to Minnesota and you win. And then you go to New York and you win. You beat Memphis and you beat Alabama. Now your team is hot and your name gets hot. And so I say sometimes a lot for young assistant coaches in NIT. It's a chance to build up your resume where a lot of people are watching everything. And after that, by that time was over with, you had 3 openings, Tennessee, Wake Forest, and South Carolina all approaching. And I felt like at that time I better take one. If not, this opportunity might not come back. But the team at Tulsa, a lot of guys are turning. They were turning. But I was thinking, what else can you get? These are 3 really good jobs.
Well, let's go back to what you said for a second there, because I found it interesting how you said, they had a great team, but they played a different style, and you changed your way of coaching to kind of match up with them. You don't see that a lot of times right now in college coaching. There's a lot of turnover, and hey, it's my style. We're going to do it no matter who's here. But was that tough for you to kind of change your style a little bit to fit the personnel that you had?
Well, Mike, I tried to do my style. I tried to do it. But it wasn't, we lost some games, and I just didn't feel like something went in line. So I called Bill. I said, Bill, can you give me some time this week sometime to talk a little bit about this? And so John was in there, Phillips, and I had another assistant, Ed Conroy was in there. So we were going over it. And so we did it. And I'll tell you something interesting. So we lose in the WAC tournament. Coach Smith was retired at the time. He says, hey, you're going to get replaced some bigger teams with bigger size. We had some size, but the kids were young. So I really started with 6'7" post player Kevin Johnson from Houston, who was a homeschool kid, and a 6'5" foreman David Shelton. He was from Cincinnati, so I had to change that up a little bit. So Coach Smith and I talked. He said, look, I'm going to send you 4 pages of notes, and I want you to take a look at it. You're not going to be able to change it by the time you play Cal Irvine in 2 days, but you're going to have some time after that, 3 or 4 practices before you play your next opponent. You need to run this. So FedEx comes in the next day, sees papers. I call Coach Smith. I got one of my staff members in there. We go through it. Basically what it was an open post offense. Maybe with one post guy that everything was predicated off the dribble. This was back in 2000. And what we did a lot was a baseline drift pass. And a lot of people didn't notice it. They did not see that. And so we were able to really reverse the ball through the baseline. Anytime somebody dribbled, we all reacted to it, and somebody had to replace that spot, which you kind of did in the zone a lot. We ran that. And you got to hit some outside shots. You got to get hot. And we went on a roll with that offense. And surprised some guys on my staff, other guys said, what did we change? And I told them the whole story about and Coach Smith influenced me about opening up a little bit, having one post guy, and predicate off a dribble penetration and everything. So we got very fortunate in NIT championship off that stuff.
Yeah, that was back in 2001. So you get the FedEx. You didn't get the email with everything. You got the FedEx package right from Chapel Hill and Coach Smith. That's great. So like you said, you're hot at that time. You win the NIT championship. You probably maybe going into that year thinking you were going to be at Tulsa for a while, but you've got to strike while the iron's hot. And as you said, a couple opportunities there. Tennessee was one of them, and that's where you went. But what made that a good fit for you at the time in 2001?
Like my dad went to school there. I have a lot of family on his side from up to La Follette down to Athens, Tennessee. I'd been to some football games there. I hadn't really been to South Carolina that much. I've gone through Columbia. I was very familiar with the program from the John Roach days, Alex English, all of that. But I started getting calls from Wake Forest, from the athletic director, saying, hey, look, if you hold off, our coach is probably going to take the Tennessee or South Carolina job, and then you can come here at Wake Forest. And to me, I just felt like, look at the hair.
Love it.
Those pictures, wow. It's just, I feel like it was a really difficult job. Wake Forest was. And because, North Carolina, Duke was going to get the place, NC State was going to get some of the best, and then you had to compete against UNCC or whoever, East Carolina, to get the next best. And I just feel like at Tennessee, there was some opportunity there. I really liked the athletic director who I was talking to, Coach Dickey, and he made something very interesting. He said, look here, he says, Philip Fulmer, Pat Summitt, they got to win national championships. I just want you to stay very competitive. If anybody calls from Johnson City to the other 400 miles of the state, Memphis, I want you to go speak to it. If it's an Optimus Club, it's a Kiwanis Club, whatever, I want you to go there. And I said, okay. I started thinking, well, that's not a whole lot of pressure. I mean, I guess I can handle it. But the one thing I will tell you, at 36 years old, 37, whatever I was at the time, that is a tough league at that age to be put in. And if you think you can do it, I felt like I'd be fine and everything. But when you're president, I went through 5 presidents in 4 years there. I went through a change of athletic director. When that happens, your stick gets a little strong, short and everything. And so when the change was made, I didn't want to leave there, Mike. Because I had family, and I told the people, I said, look, if I don't get you in the NCAA tournament the 5th year, and then what I will do, I'll stay around, take the same pay, and I'll help raise money, do whatever you need me to do. But the situation was pretty difficult. I didn't realize at the time the starting backcourt was into things they shouldn't have been, and I lost both of them out of my control. So when I lost those 2 guys, and then I had a couple guys academically that were ineligible, so that's why I was getting a job to clean that stuff up. And when that happened, and the team was going to be really good, and I lost those 3 guys, and just it hurt us pretty bad. 3 starters. Marcus Hayslip was one of them. He was a lottery pick by the Bucks. So anyway, that's the reason I guess the familiarity, the family atmosphere there, known in Knoxville, and it's just that's kind of, I felt pretty good about that decision. Yeah,
you mentioned in coaching and media as well. At some point, you're going to lose your job. Especially in coaching, it's performance-based, it's record-based. You know how that works. Was that difficult? What was that experience like at the time? And did it help to have your family, your wife, Jan, and your family there to kind of be by your side?
It was very, very humbling, Mike. It was difficult. You had 3 young kids who didn't quite understand. It caught me off guard a little bit when it happened. It was surprising. I didn't see it coming. So that got you a little bit. But after the dust settled and everything, a gentleman by the name of Alan LaForce, who was the women's coach at Coastal Carolina, we were together at East Tennessee State as assistants for Les. He kept calling me and said, listen, I want you to come to look at Coastal Carolina. I didn't know much about it. I'd heard of school, yes, and everything. And so, and I talked to Coach Smith. But we had opportunity at Florida Atlantic also. I talked to them and Coastal. And Coach Smith said, hey, look, he says, you got a pretty good team come by next year. I said, yeah, I think we'll be pretty good. And he says, well, that's good for a young AD. That's going to make him look better. Here's his hire with this group. So they're going to make a change there. He says, they're going to be successful off you. You're going to be in that town. Get out of town. Get out of town. And so I took his advice, and I took the Coastal Carolina job. And so off we went for Myrtle Beach there for the 2 years and everything. So do I look back and say, should I stayed in Knoxville, da, da, da? You still want to coach, you still feel like you want to do it. And Coach LaForce, I love the man to death. He's still alive, still living this day. He's here in Rock Hill. And I took his advice, and with Coach Smith, we went off to Coastal Carolina.
I want to talk about Coastal for a second, but I want to backtrack to Tennessee, and you mentioned Pat Summitt, obviously women's basketball, and she's a legend on that side. What was that relationship like, and were there some things that you took away from her coaching style and what she did, because obviously she was winning national championships there at the time?
When I got the job, Roy Williams called me. He said, "Look here," he said, "I know you don't have this ego or anything, but I want you to do me a favor. He said, I want you to really listen to that lady." He said, "Buzz, she knows the game, and there's something she's doing pretty special there. So pick her brain. When you get good information, call me. I want to know the same what she's doing." So I kind of took that up, and I told her, I said, "Hey, look, as much as you let me talk to you about X's and O's or whatever you're doing, whatever, just let me know." But you know what I gained from her more than anything else? She would come in my office. I've had a day timer. I still have them to this day. You probably saw the day timers on my desk at Wilmington. But my tutor at Carolina got me involved in that. So I had a day timer on my desk. And I noticed one day somebody had been in there and was marking on it. And it kept saying, "Meet with your players. Meet with your players." So I asked my secretary. I said, "Who's coming in here doing this?" She said, "I can't say." She said, "You should know who's doing that." And I said, "Oh, I know exactly who's doing it." So I went over to Pat and I said, "You writing in my day timer? Why are you doing that for?" She says, "You got to build a relationship with your players." And I said, "I am, but Coach," I said, I got to go to Johnson City tomorrow, and then I got to speak twice, one in Nashville, one in Murfreesboro the next day. She says, "Buzz, I'm telling you, you better tell them no, because if the players don't trust you off the floor, how are they going to trust you on the floor? You better build those relationships." She does two things. She meets with them in their house, and she meets with them in the office. And it's not so much about the basketball. She talks about their life. And that's why she was so successful. Those players would run through a brick wall for her because they loved her, they believed her, and they knew that she had her back for them. And so I learned that was so important, the relationships you build with these players. If I told a young man, a young lady to this day, if they're coaching, I said, you better get to know your people playing for you. And that's the most, take all the X and O's, all that stuff out on the floor. You better have a strong bond, strong relationship. It's not so much the starters. They're going to be happy. It better be that 15th person, that boy or that lady, that girl that you better get to know that believe in you also. And so, anyway, it was there. And the one thing I do, they still have this day, the checkerboard on the baseline. I went to Coach Dickey about that. I said, "Look, football's got the checkerboard on the field." I said, "Why don't we put it on the basketball court?" I said, because I never forget my dad said, "Look, you this Tennessee job." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, let me explain something to you." He said, you better not have an ego." I said, "Why, Dad?" He said, "Well, there's football there. You understand that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Then there's spring football." I said, "Yes." So I said, "We're not better." He said, "No, spring football is big. I mean, they'll have 75, 80,000 for their game." He said, "Son, I tell you, third is lady ball basketball. You'll be fourth fiddle in this." And he was right. He was right. So, but I didn't have ego, and I just wanted to build it, try to get as high as I could. So I thought the checkerboard would kind of help me draw those people in like that. So, but I love Tennessee. I still love it to this day. And I watch their football team. I watch what Rick's doing in basketball, and I just hate that we couldn't get it going there. And just like Wilmington, I hate we couldn't get it turned around. So that's how things work out, and you got to move on.
Well, so your lasting impression there, you look at the court, I think of you now when I watch your Tennessee basketball game at home. There you go. That's great. That's great. So, yeah, Coastal for a couple of years. Then you get out of coaching. You work for the Bobcats, working for and with Michael Jordan. What got you back into coaching? Because you had a second stint at Appalachian State after that. Is it something that you just had to get back to?
That really caught me off guard when Michael called me and said, "Look, I'm going to get the basketball part of the Bobcats." He said, "I want you to come with me." And I said, "Whoa." I said, "What would I be doing?" He said, "I want you to be director of player personnel. You're going to be in charge of the scouting, the players in the country. I want you to keep an eye on the team, all this stuff." He says, "No stress, thought about the coaching, and I thought about it for a long time, and then that's when we got excited to do it.
And what was that like? To be out of coaching for the first time in a while.
Tough, tough. Mike, there's something about being on the floor teaching the game of basketball, and that's what I've been doing for all those years. And I struggled, I really did, and it was hard for me not to be there. And that's when I told Mike, I may have to get back into coaching. I says it's hard for you to understand, but you're teaching these young men, basketball, that stuff is just. And I said I always say the perfect world for a coach would be you practice Monday through Friday, and on Saturday you have this scrimmage. Those games turn your stomach upside down and all that stuff, and then Sunday's off. But anyway, it's so I had to get back in Appalachian State. Called back again, and we talked about it. And I wasn't sure about doing that or not, but we went back there for a year, and then on to Wilmington after that.
Yeah, going back to App, what was it like going back a second time? Obviously, you had great success there the first time. You went to the NCAA tournament. As you said, you won regular season titles in the SoCon and then the tournament as well. Did you think you had a chance to recapture that feeling for you and that program as well?
Well, it was hard to take it because my assistant had a job, Houston Fancher, and I said I would not take this job unless he has a blessing behind it, in which he did and everything. And a lot of credit, he did a good job. It's just you didn't get into the tournament and win that championship game. That year I went back, we got into the final game, and we went up against a very hot Wofford team and beat us. But we got in that CIT tournament and beat Jeremy Lin's team, Harvard, at home in that tournament, and then went and won at Marshall against Hassan Whiteside, and then lost at home to Pacific in the third round. But it was a great tournament, great time there. I commuted. My family stayed in Charlotte, so in the beginning I was driving 103 miles one way and then back after practice, so that got a little old after a while. But I had the love for Boone. I really enjoyed it, but it just at the end, I just, I didn't know what Wilmington came calling, and I thought, what, it's a better situation. We may have to take a look at it.
Now, you mentioned Houston Fancher. You eventually had him a part of your staff at UNCW as well. And reading about you and the UNCW job, you wanted that job earlier, the previous time that it came open, and it just didn't work out at that time.
Yeah, and that's how things are, and that's fine. And I just looked at it, and when I was at Coastal Carolina, I remember coming up there and playing, and Brad was there, and they had a heck of a team, and they beat us pretty good at home. And what I saw in Trask Coliseum, I said, wow, this environment's pretty good. The community's behind them and everything. So, the thing that made the job a little difficult was you had, Mike, I want to say 70 or 50 some days between when Benny was let go until when we took it over. And we had some academic issues. And again, kind of a little bit like Tennessee, that kind of set you back a little bit. And so now you're kind of behind the eight ball a little bit. And it's hard to just recover back then. The transfer portal wasn't that big. Usually transfer, you had to sit out a year or whatever. So now it's guys are transferring and play right away. So we just couldn't really get it going. And then we had the situation where we couldn't even play in the postseason. I think it was the second year. And of course, recruiting people were killing us on that. And that set you back even more. So when things get going like that, it's probably best to make a change and get another person in there and everything. And yeah, it's upsetting that you couldn't get it going and everything. But, I can't hold against Jimmy Bass or anything. You got it. I mean, I'm in Jimmy's position now, and you got to win, and it's sometimes you have to make that change, and that heart is tough to swallow. But now I look at it and say, hey, I don't blame him. You wouldn't win, and the team went very successful, but we just got behind early on some things, and I was nervous. I was nervous that a lot of that stuff happened early. I knew we wanted to really turn around. Get some guys in there that could really turn things, but it was hard to get some guys. We had a pretty good class there with Adam Smith and everything, but he leaves and goes to Virginia Tech and to Georgia Tech, and then had a couple other kids leaving, so that it made it difficult then.
Yeah, you had I think an 8-player class at one point. That's a lot of kids, but you look at it now. UNCW fans that may be watching this, Craig Ponder was one of those guys, and he stuck around, won a championship there, and is now an assistant coach on that staff. So again, it seems like you've left a positive mark behind at UNCW, whether you realize that or not.
Yeah, the thing I will say, I felt like that we got the guys. I mean, it's just get them back in class. Get think you're there as a student first, stuff like that. Trying to get guys that, and those are some things we had to do. Heck, the basketball court at the time. Let's get back and focus on the classroom. So, but yeah, what you want to do for Kevin coming in is you want to. I talked to Kevin, and you want to make sure this individual, this is what you need to be doing. Think about it, and to make sure that some things you did that helped him be successful in a player here and there. So you're happy to see him turn around. It's tough. You think, why couldn't we get it done? But in the back of your mind what happened, and you don't want to go out there and talk about a lot, but you're just glad to see some of those kids like Ponder be very successful.
Let's talk about, again, you made the transition out of coaching now with the Charlotte Hornets. So Michael Jordan, able to work with him once again. What's your role currently, and what's that like for you to once again be away from the court from a coaching standpoint, but have some other roles?
Yeah, it's been an interesting transition. I mean, it's back when 14 came in, and it's just you're with the team a lot, kind of Michael's eyes and ears and watching the team play. To move up to a different position where you started doing some scouting a little bit, also watching the team until your role involved as assistant general manager, which I've been doing the last 4 or 5 years, I believe, and that can lead to anything. Mike, now you're looking at some budget situations. You're looking at now you're watching other NBA teams for trades. You're dealing with these big contracts now. You're negotiating with agents. Each team can have 2 people that negotiate contracts. Well, Mitch Kupchak and myself do that. 2 people can talk to other teams. That's Mitch and myself. So you can be watching a basketball game every single night. I try to be disciplined. One night, Jen and I can go get dinner somewhere. Now we're blessed with 3 grandkids, so you want to see those. But see those kids. But it's I try to I look at the NBA schedule. I look at the college schedule. They'll give me maybe 25 guys right now to zero in and take a look at for the draft. That list goes down a little bit. Now with the G League, you got to stay on top of that. Watch players there. Now it's a new league called the Overtime. It's got 24 players in it and all the international stuff. So your day starts early where you're looking at the computer, all the box scores that's going on, and just trying to keep up with things that are going on in around basketball in the whole world. So you can watch a game every night. I mean, you can literally watch it. If it's college or it's pro, you can watch it every night. But what's interesting to me sometimes, when a college game is on there and it's a pretty good game, my eyes turn or my hands go to that channel and start watching that college game a little bit. It's just something you did for so many years. It's like I told a group of people the other day, and we were talking about players one and done and people thinking about going into the G League early and the Overtime League. I said, let me tell you something. There's nothing like experience in college. There's nothing like sitting down with the guys on the team where you got a dinner and a bus ride and all that stuff. But just the students, the crowd at the game, the noise, the excitement, everything. There's nothing like college sports.
Yeah, and you've been to some of the best campuses, best environments in college basketball, I'm sure, as well. And I want to touch on your family because they are so important for you. We saw that when you were here at UNCW. Your wife Jan, your 3 kids now, as you said, the 3 grandkids. So you are a grandfather now, and as a coach, and now as a GM as well, you're dedicating so much time to your craft. How do you balance that with your family as well to make sure that you're there when they need you as well?
Yeah, there's nothing like, when we hear stories, when Jan tells stories of the kids when they were younger, I miss those. I wasn't there. Like I said, like Tennessee, you're running all over the state speaking in this. You miss, I spoke on Saturday mornings sometimes. I do miss those times with the kids, but now I have 3 grandkids, and I want to see them as much as possible. It's just you got to look at that picture. You've got to try to enjoy as much as possible, and Michael knows that. He's very good about spending time with your family. There's 2 times. There's all these Thanksgiving tournaments and Christmas tournaments. I know I don't even ask Jan to travel then. I know I better be around the house because those times are very special for her and everything. So it's a balance. If I told a young man now coaching, I would tell him, get your priorities right. Spend some time with your family, those young kids. Basketball's always going to look at that. Basketball's always going to be there, everything, and that your assistants can handle it. And it's just, I always say, hire good people. And I go back to Coach Smith. Another thing I said, Coach, along with discipline, what else is important? He said, the first 2 hours of your job. And I said, what do you mean? He says, yeah, the first 2 hours. I said, what tell me. He said, that's who you're going to hire. You've already known before you got that job who you're going to hire, but the people working for you, those people are going to make you successful.
Good stuff. Good advice, Sarah. We're going to end on this. A question that I probably should have asked you a long time ago. Where does buzz come from? It's Robert Bauer Peterson Jr.
That's right.
Well, where's the buzz come into play here?
Buzz comes from a cartoon called Brother Buzz. My sister's favorite cartoon in the, let's say 60s that she watched. And it was a little bee that flew around. And she used to call it, when I was little, crawling around, that's my Brother Buzz right there, like the bee on TV. So as I got older, it was there. But in Hickory, if I went back to Hickory, a lot of people would call me Bobby as a kid. But Buzz has stuck for all these years. Look at there. And so I've just had it. There's not many people, even when I have to sign Robert, it feels weird. There's Eddie Fogler will call me Robert. And Roy Williams will call me Bauer by my middle name. So but Buzz has stuck for 50 some years. But my sister and her middle child, her name is Andrea, but I call her Buffy just to get back at my sister.
There's always an origin story for the nickname. So there you go.
Right.
Your sister is the one that we can look to for that. Coach, this has been enjoyable. It's been great to catch up with you and to really dive into your history. Again, my time with you was the 4 years at UNCW, but just a great sports journey that you have to share, and we're glad that you shared that with us here today.
Mike, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Well, again, my thanks to Buzz Peterson for joining us here today. Great stories all around, and even a little Cal Ripken thrown in there as well. We appreciate his time here today as the NBA season about to get underway. We appreciate you joining us here today as well. Stick with us. More great shows lined up, more great guests, more great stories to come as well. As always, my thanks to JR Quitman, our creator, producer, and director of the show, Chuck Denson, that voice you hear at the beginning, everybody else who makes this what it is. Episode 3 in the books, episode 4 coming your way soon. Again, it is In the Front Row with Mike Vaccaro. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day, everybody.